presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. The only destination where you don't have to go up against the Sharks playing 150 lineups each night. Cash prizes. And we got $2,000 or $3,000 to first place tonight. And the MLB guaranteed. Again, no cute names there, just cold, hard money. And you sign Fantasy up using the link. Helps us out a lot, but it'll help you as well. You sign up using the link, use the code AWESOME, get up to $30 back in Yahoo Sports rewards points, those YSRPs. You can use them as currency on the site to win money, real money. And then if you would like, withdraw it, whatever you want. It's your money. You do with it as you please. Check out the link. We'll throw that in chat. You want me to do that, or are you going to do it, Alex?
I don't have the link handy, so
all right. I'll toss it on in there. And we'll go about our business. Dave Loughran, Adam Scher, and, of course, Awesomeo himself, Alex Baker. We got a 13-gamer today, fellas. One game postponed in Kansas City between the Royals and the Cardinals, but still a pretty extended slate with a lot of pitching options, Adam.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Alex and I were talking about it a little bit before the show. I think I'm on some islands with pitching, which, I mean, it's a 14 or 13 game slate, so ownership gets spread out anyway. But we haven't had a slate like this in a while where I think I've been just very different than a lot of other people.
Yeah, yesterday didn't go as planned. I wasted a 36 fantasy point Hanser Alberto performance in a lot of lineups just to have a pretty rough night. How'd you do last night, Alex? And what do you think of tonight's slate?
Man, I did all right because I had him as well in a couple of lineups. But we have to do that thing where we recommend every player, so then we could be like, well, we recommended Hanser Alberto.
Yeah.
How could you not pick that of the 100 players?
Yeah, do the whole, oh, well, I mentioned him thing, right. even though you mentioned everyone in every game. The truth is that doesn't do anybody any favors, and we really do try to avoid doing that here because, we're trying to help you with the process, understanding how to land on the right players, and it's baseball. There's 162 games. It's not always going to go your way, but I'd much rather on certain nights be wrong instead of, when you're naming every player, you're going to be right every night, but you're also going to be wrong a ton of the time. I think they just assume, well, everyone will remember the right ones and forget that I mentioned 182 wrong players as well. But what are you going to do, man? Anyway, I'm dropping the link in right now. Let's kick it off. We're glad to have all of you with us as always. There's the link for Yahoo. Use the code AWESOME as well. Up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points. Let's get it popping here. We'll kick it off with the Phillies and the Cubs. Nice little come from behind win there. Bloop 2-run single from Gene Segura last night, or 1-run single to tie it up and then win it in 10 innings. Darvish got off to an early hot start, Alex. Arrieta was fine, but all in all, not a great night for pitchers. Zach Eflin and Jose Quintana on the mound today. We've got a lot of wind blowing in. You've got, once again, chilly temperatures at Wrigley Field and two pretty low totals for both of these offenses.
Yeah, I think because of the low totals, with the over-under being at 7, we're going to see some pitching from this game. Quintana is definitely standing out as a really good option on both DraftKings and Yahoo, and DraftKings and FanDuel. On Yahoo, he's a little bit more. But also, I noticed our projected ownership is from this morning, so they might not have adjusted completely for the win yet, but only 13% owned, only 8K, and the strikeout matchup is about average. So all in all, I think that makes for a pretty appealing prospect facing a team that only has a team total of 3.7.
What about you, Adam? Again, dude, this is tough. The Alex and I might have to come up with some different names just to make this transition easier because I am struggling. Your name is Adam. That's who I'm trying to speak to now. Adam Scher. Pitching on this slate, like I said, low totals as should be expected. 3.8 for Philly, 3.3 for Philly, 3.8 for Chicago. Both of them have come down significantly throughout the day, but you do have the Cubs favored here. Not by a ton. They're -130 at home. Is pitching anything you're looking at, and how do you factor in price tags when a guy like Eflin is so damn expensive?
Yeah, I mean, pitching's pretty much all that I'm looking at from this game. Quintana is the more appealing option on FanDuel and DraftKings, as Alex said. He projects well. I mean, the Phillies have a low implied run total. The wind's blowing in. It's cold. All that's working in his favor. The one thing that I'm really interested to see is where Quintana's projected ownership actually ends up at, because he's the type of pitcher who I think from a medium projection standpoint grades out really well, point per dollar. But from a range of outcome standpoint, I don't think he has the same ceiling as some other pitchers priced around him, specifically Spencer Turnbull in his matchup with the Marlins. Quintana, overall this season, his strikeout percentage is about 23%. It's up a little bit from last year, but against righties, he's only struck out 20.2%. You have a Philadelphia lineup that has all right-handed hitters with the exception of Bryce Harper. It's not a spot where I expect Quintana to go out there and just like mow this team down and rack up points. It is a spot where I expect him to, give us 6 or 7 innings of just, good pitching, and I expect a good performance. But if his ownership is high because of the implied run total, he's not someone that I'm really afraid of pivoting away from. And then with Eflin, I have zero interest on DraftKings or FanDuel, but he does stand out on Yahoo. He's down at, I think it's $36, maybe $35. And it's not a real good strikeout matchup against the Cubs. He hasn't struck out a lot of hitters this year either, only at 19.8%. But the weather obviously is favorable, and cheap pitching on this slate, you're kind of taking risks everywhere. And so Eflin, I think, on Yahoo is a pretty appealing option.
You mentioned the pitcher, by the way, that is one of the reasons you're not as high on Quintana. That's the same thing for me. I have a ton of interest in Turnbull today. A K plus per inning guy going up against, he gets the pitch. He hits the pitcher lottery today against the Marlins. We'll get into that, but I do think it makes a difference when you're looking at some of these mid-range guys. Let's keep it moving then. If we're not talking, actually, I'll ask you, Alex, are there any batters in this game that you're looking at?
I think there's one that stands
Schwarber?
out. Yeah, Schwarber, just because he's leading off and he's only 3.6K. Despite the low run total, I think he's a great value on both DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. I guess so. I think as far as cash games, he's definitely an option. We'll have to go through all the games to see if he's top option. Probably not, but he's definitely a great value.
Yeah, that's the only one for me as well. You're getting him very inexpensive, leading off. Look, the matchup might not be perfect, but Eflin is much better against righties than he is against lefties. And then you just factor in the fact that he's likely to see more at bats than anyone in this game. So I'm with you. If anybody, it would be Kyle Schwarber, simply because of how cheap he is. The Yankees and Baltimore Orioles, Adam, David Hess, Domingo Germán. It's funny because Cashner wasn't terrible yesterday. The bullpen gave up 7 runs, though, and just completely imploded over the latter stages of that one. David Hess is on the mound today. When you look at Cashner and say, well, Cashner's not very good, maybe not, but David Hess is worse. So, this dude is, when you're talking about bad pitching, there are not a lot of pitchers out there, particularly on this slate, that are much worse than David. Has 16% strikeout rate against right-handers. He's giving up 4.01 homers per 9 with over 100 batters faced. It's a pretty appealing matchup for righties, and the Yankees have plenty of them with their 5.9 run total today as well.
Yeah, there's a lot that's really appealing about the Yankees here for various reasons. For one, the starting point, obviously David Hess is really bad. Last year he wasn't good, but he at least had one pitch in his slider that was good enough that he could kind of make his way through some games and be effective. But that pitch is nowhere near effective this year as it was last year. So he's really had nothing. He's allowed over a 400 expected WOBA to righties, over a 200 ISO to righties, well over 200 ISO to righties. And this Yankees lineup is full of right-handed power. The only lefty in the lineup is Aaron Hicks, a switch hitter who is very good in his own right. but you get some guys who are probably a little bit more expensive than they should be or lower in the lineup than they should be that maybe keeps their ownership down. Guys like Gio Urshela at 4,500, Clint Frazier batting 7th. Austin Romine gives you a way that you can differentiate in tournaments because such a high percentage of Yankee stacks are going to have Gary Sanchez over Austin Romine. So there's a variety of ways that you can attack the Yankees in addition to just the guys that you really want with Voit, Sanchez, and Torres, the right-handed power. So I think it's just a really appealing stack for a variety of reasons. You can be contrarian there. It's a good matchup against Hess, and it's a terrible Baltimore bullpen behind them.
All right. Alex, we had some people saying that they're having trouble hearing you. So
yeah, I'm getting all these messages, man. It's a lot trying to come in here and produce like I'm one of the big guys. So I'm learning along the way. Let me just try to adjust this. I'm not sure which way is up and down, so bear with me. Okay.
All right. Well,
All right.
We'll get it worked out.
I think,
What are your thoughts here with the Yankees and Baltimore?
I like it a lot. I mean, on the road versus at Camden Yards, that's like becoming a thing right now. And when you have a great team like the Yankees, that's even better. The run total says it all, 6.3. And the ownership is not as high as you might expect because some of these guys are pricey. So, I mean, the average price in the Yankees lineup on DraftKings is $5K. On FanDuel, it's in the mid-3s. On Yahoo, it's in the high teens. And I think on all three sites, you're getting what you pay for, which, that's not going to make or break you in cash games. But in GPPs, that's big when there's some underpriced stacks that get all the ownership. Right now, I have the Yankees projected to be lower owned than their potential in all three sites. And I think we've already come across a lineup with the guys we talked about that's pretty viable. Just Turnbull, Quintana, and the Yankees. I think you'd be set.
Yeah, I think so too. I would like to know where you stand on a guy like Domingo Germán, though. The way I see him is there are a lot of pitchers in this price range, kind of similar to like Soroka yesterday. Soroka ended up being solid, but and a lot of that is just because the Giants are so bad. You don't even need a lot of strikeouts. But Domingo Germán is very capable of getting strikeouts. A 3.7 total for the Baltimore Orioles in this one. Alex, the Yankees are 2 favorites, and the guy has one of the highest swinging strike rates on the slate at 13.3. His called strike plus swinging strike is almost 33%. It's rivaling guys like Max Scherzer. So is this somebody that stands out to you, or is there too much in this price range to get on Domingo Germán?
I think it's more the latter, which is why I think he might be a good contrarian play today.
Yeah.
The price tag of 10K, that's like almost as high as like some serious aces. His strikeout rate on the year is 26%, above average, but not necessarily worth 10K. And the Baltimore lineup, they strike out 24%. The league average is 23%. So all in all, I think it's a great spot for Germán, but he might not be as good a play as far as value compared to some of the other pitchers tonight.
What do you make of Germán, Adam?
Yeah, I really like his stuff. I think it's a perfectly fine matchup. But the problem that I have is I don't think that when you look at pitchers around him, I don't think he's at quite as good or has quite as much upside as some guys, priced in that range. But also the Orioles don't strike out quite as much as teams like the Padres against Greinke or the Tigers against Smith, the White Sox against Verlander. It's going to be really tough for me to get there, especially with it being a 13-game slate. I can get to other pitchers that I like a little bit more than Germán at still really low ownership. So I don't need to worry about that all that much there. He's just someone that I think is a little bit overpriced, and I'd rather get to other guys priced around him.
All right. And before we move on, top bats from this game.
For me, it's Sanchez, Torres, and Voit.
All right. Pittsburgh and Colorado will stick with you, Adam. Herman Marquez. So you have Domingo Germán and Herman Marquez. And then Chris Archer. I'll tell you this much before I send it over to you. I feel like a guy in Domingo Germán Herman Marquez. It's the names that get me every time. is really, really good. And I think at times he is pretty unheralded, or his stuff goes overlooked. Ownership right now, we have him, because it is a deep slate, coming in around 15%, which isn't that high. Among pitchers, that's 1, 2, 3. Oh, actually, wow. So his ownership projections come up, 15%. I still don't think it's crazy high. I'm just a huge fan of Marquez, and a couple things to point out. Like when you're breaking down his stuff, Adam, he on this slate that has some really good pitchers, he has the third highest swinging strike rate at 13.8%. And while he's had some tough matchups, he has to pitch inside of Coors Field. His 24.5% K rate, I only expect that to rise as the season goes on. He starts to get more favorable matchups outside of Coors. What are your thoughts on this pitching matchup between Marquez and Chris Archer, who, look, not very good, but he is a strikeout plus per inning guy, so we need to at least talk about him.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as Marquez goes, I really like the skill set there as well, but I don't think I'm going to get to much on this slate, even though the park is obviously a huge upgrade for him over Coors. But there's a couple things that kind of scare me here. And for one, Pittsburgh doesn't strike out a lot. If you go through for the season against right-handed pitching, they're at about 20.5%. But if you go through the lineup individually, the only guys here that really strike out are Tucker and Brian Reynolds. But on top of that, against lefties this season, of which there are 6 in the lineup for Pittsburgh, Marquez has only struck out 19.7%. Last season, he struck out 22%. So, even last year when he had that 28.5% overall strikeout percentage, a huge majority of that was coming from right-handed bats. So now you're getting a slate full of ace pitchers in good strikeout matchups. And you're getting a pitcher in Marquez that is facing a lot of left-handed hitters, which lowers his strikeout projection, and a lot of hitters who just don't strike out. It's really tough for me to get there, especially with him projected for reasonably high ownership. Archer, on the other hand, I think is a huge wild card. Like, I have no idea what to make of him. His velocity has been down this year. It ticked up a little bit in his last start, but was still well below where it was at last year. He's walked 12% of hitters through his first 6 starts this year compared to like 7.5% last year. But the strikeouts are still there at about 25.5%, and you're getting the Rockies outside of Coors. Once you get past the top 6, you get some free outs with Desmond, Walters, and Marquez. He's cheap on every site, so I have some interest there. It's just that I would rather go to like a Spencer Turnbull in that price range. So that kind of lowers my Archer ownership.
Okay, break this one down for us as well, Alex. 2 pitchers that are that offer fantasy value. Depending on the slate, but we've got 13 games, 26 pitchers, and more than a handful of good ones going today.
Yeah, I think first of all, the batters in this game, the team totals are pretty low, so I'd probably steer clear of them. With the pitchers, I think both of them I'm going to be on tonight. Archer, as you guys mentioned, he's been having a rough year. His ERA is 5.5, his xFIP is 4.8, so he's been getting a little bit unlucky as well. Tonight, I think the exposing team total of 4.3 gives me a lot of hope. A little bit below average there, and his strikeouts have been there. So I think given his price tag on DraftKings and FanDuel, 8K and 7.1K, he's definitely a bargain. Of course, maybe there's something broken about him. You never really know, but I'm willing to give him a shot in GPPs. For Marquez, I agree with Adam. The strikeouts aren't that good. With Pittsburgh, I have them projected to strike out 20.5%, which is about 10% less than average. But the price of 9.2K, that is low for his talent level, I think. And on FanDuel, he's only 8.2K. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of viable options at this price range. And to me, that means it's open season because the ownership's going to be spread out. It's just going to be picking the right one at the right ownership.
Yeah, I agree. And Archer, unsurprisingly, has been markedly better in Pittsburgh. Not a huge sample, but it wouldn't surprise you to see him be much better in a very pitcher-friendly stadium like PNC Park. I think this is one of those games to me where both pitchers have massive upside. Even if the strikeout matchup isn't great for Marquez, he's a good enough pitcher. Like at 9,200, as you said, he's a good enough pitcher to put forth a really solid game. And with Archer, I mean, really, it's Colorado. This team has created some of the best performances for opposing pitchers all season long. They just have so many swings and misses throughout their lineup. Alex, what about hitters in this one? I can't imagine you're high on either side for hitters.
Yeah, I think the team totals are pretty low, 4.3 and 3.8. As far as them being the top stacks of the day, Colorado I have as about a 2.5% chance, which is 1 in 40. So that means it's a little bit below average. Pittsburgh I have at about 1%, so that's just like way too low. Unless you're playing like a winner take all tournament or something, there's not really much advantage to going there. And the worst part of it all is the prices just aren't that good. I only have Colorado projected for 1.7 points per dollar and Pittsburgh for 1.85 and on DraftKings. So I think below average value and below the average potential.
Anything to add there, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pricing is the big thing for me because I actually like the idea of getting to full Colorado stacks because Archer does have so much blow-up potential and the Pirates' bullpen's not good. But the problem is just that you're sacrificing so much because you end up paying $5K or more for Blackman, Story, and Arenado. So now you're just taking this stand on a really low percentage offense, but you're not getting like good pitching with it or anything like that. So it makes it tough.
And you're also competing with the park as well.
Right.
Not that you fade a team just because of the park, but it doesn't add to the appeal either. So
yeah, for sure.
A bunch of things working against the batters today, but are working very much in favor of the pitchers. So this was definitely a game we wanted to spend a lot of time on, but we move on now. Adam, Boston, Toronto, Eduardo Rodriguez, Marcus Stroman. Eduardo Rodriguez earlier in the day when I did the strategy show with our boy Josh Engelman was projected, I think, higher than both of us would have expected, but it does kind of make sense. You know, on DraftKings, he was below 9K, and hell, maybe there's something psychologically that gets people on them. Not saying it's factored into the ownership, but you know, he is definitely looking relatively appealing against a Toronto team that is kind of just been punchless all season long. He's at 14% projected ownership on DraftKings. That's your fifth highest pitcher. And then as we work across the sites here, Eduardo Rodriguez is all the way down at 5% on FanDuel at 8,900. And on, of course, our sponsor, Yahoo.com, Eduardo Rodriguez is coming in at 13%. So most popularity on DraftKings right now at that price point, Adam.
Yeah, he's my favorite pitcher in his price range here. I like him more than Marquez. I like him more than Wheeler. I like him more than Eflin. So I think it's a good matchup. You get, a very right-handed heavy lineup, but Rodriguez has been very good against them this year. Overall, he struck out 25.7% of hitters. He has a 4.89 ERA. His PCRA, which is a stat that actually correlates with future ERA better, it's more predictive of ERA than xFIP is 3.31, so 1.58 runs lower than his ERA. He ranks 30th out of all starting pitchers that have thrown at least 300 pitches this year, with a 30.5% called strike plus swinging strike percentage. So a lot of the underlying metrics I like to look at are actually really favorable for Rodriguez. On top of that, against righties this year, he's allowed 0.099 ISO, striking out 25.7%, like I said. Toronto against lefties as a team has struck out 25.5% of the time with a 66 WRC+. The only guys in the lineup that I think are particularly scary are Vlad Guerrero and Grichuk. If he can get through those guys, he is in line, I think, for a really good game. So I like Rodriguez quite a bit.
We just had a question. I'm not going to answer it now because we haven't gotten through all the games, but assuming we have time at the end of the show, I think it would be very helpful to the viewer for us to give our top pitching options at each tier and, at the top, middle, and bottom. And if if there's nobody at the bottom, there's no one at the bottom. But
there is.
What's that?
It's an there is.
Oh, I know there is, but I'm saying if one of us it doesn't like them, maybe Alex doesn't have a guy at the bottom. I knew you did because you mentioned that you wrote up 14 pitchers today. So that you kind of tipped your hand. Alex, Boston and Toronto, are you as high on Eduardo Rodriguez as Adam is?
Yeah, I agree with Adam. He's a strong pick today. Uh, he's been really unlucky with the runs this year, so I expect his potential to be higher than what we've seen so far. The strikeouts have been good, 25%. The league average is 23%, so that's positive, and the price tag is affordable. And also, the switch to Toronto from Boston is favorable since Boston is a hitter's park. So I think all those factors, we do a pretty good play, but not someone who's jumping off the charts.
Yeah, okay. What about bats here, Alex? Boston, unsurprisingly, has a pretty high run total, but I will say this much. I'm I have respect for Marcus Stroman. To me, he's one of those guys that is a much better real life pitcher when he's healthy, like he wasn't for most of last year, than he is a fantasy pitcher. Boston has a 4.9 run total here. Actually, no, I think it's down to 4.6. But they always have some interest because they're the Boston Red Sox. Which side of this do you stand on, or neither?
I think the price is right on DraftKings, but on FanDuel and Yahoo, the value is not nearly as good for the Red Sox. But what I find is when you have a team like Boston, the team total is 4.9. That's pretty good, but not amazing. And the fact that their prices are good as well leads me to think they might be a little bit overowned compared to their potential tonight.
Adam, anything to add here on bats? I don't really have much from the hitting standpoint in this game.
No, I mean, I agree with what Alex said. It comes down to what their projected ownership is. One thing I did want to add for the person that asked about the pitching price tiers, the deep dive article today is in front of the paywall, and I did break it down by price with my favorite guys at each tier highlighted, if that helps.
All right. It should help. Absolutely. That is the deep dive. Adam and I switch off each day writing that. Put a lot of time into it. If you've read it, you would know. It is behind paywall, but it's worth the read. And
It's free today.
oh, that's right. Deep dive free today. So there you go. Check it out. And if that's not enough, we have our ownership projections, our player projections. Alex Osimo's stack tool, the top stacks under the MLB tab, which is really awesome. So much more. The Fantasy Cruncher add-on with the Fantasy Cruncher Pro, which really gives you an opportunity to break down every contest, every lineup from anybody, and anything you want. It's all there. You got the lineup builder as well, which is great for anyone that's not an MME player, and top content for any sport out there that offers daily fantasy contests. We've got you covered. So if you want to check it out, head over to awesemo.com and use the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, Deeper Dive, not two, but one, to get 50% off your first month. And we have our premium Slack chat. There we go again. Slack chat. Hop in there and say what's up. Be happy to show you around when you do. Remember, Deeper Dive is the promo code to get half off your first month at awesemo.com to get access to all these neat stats and tools that we reference each and every day right here on the show. All right. Alex, Dodgers, Tampa Bay, Clayton Kershaw on the bump for the Dodgers. Hunter Wood opening, Jalen Beeks expected to be the long reliever here. He really hasn't, for a minute there, Kevin Cash was letting him throw 75, 84 pitches, 66, and then he was down to 50 and 47 despite, two very strong performances. He's been very good this year. It's just very tough to rely on a guy at that price. Now, he is minimum salary on Yahoo. We can talk about that. But let's start with Clayton Kershaw against a Rays team with a sub-4 implied total.
I think Clayton Kershaw, since last year, he hasn't really been the same. And tonight, we're seeing he's priced pretty high among some of the top pitchers. But if he was facing a better matchup, I think that'd be fine. But I have the Rays striking out a little bit less than average. The team total is 3.9, which is low, but not exactly projecting a ace performance. So I think he's one of those guys where I think you can get. He's a good play, but not a great one.
What about you, Adam? We have Kershaw here. Alex is right. He hasn't been the same pitcher. There's no denying that. I mean, just 2 years ago, if you were to sort the slate by swinging strike rate, Kershaw would be at the top. This year, he is ninth on the slate at 12.3. It's not bad at all. He is getting less called strikes than usual, but a lot of his numbers are still good. They're still solid. It's just a lot of his numbers aren't elite. So which Clayton Kershaw should we expect to see tonight at Tropicana Field?
Yeah, it's really tough for me to get there too. I think that the matchup's fine. I think the park obviously is really good. And on some slates, I would really like Kershaw. But on this particular slate, he has the 11th highest strikeout percentage this season. He's the 5th most expensive pitcher on DraftKings. I don't really see the reason to get there, especially because there's basically you have Zach Greinke on this slate too at the same price point, who to me is kind of a clone of Kershaw as far as not the highest strikeout percentage, but he doesn't walk guys and he's in a good strikeout matchup. But Greinke's been better this year in terms of PCRA and just preventing runs, and I think has a little bit better is in a little bit better spot. So, even if that's the kind of pitcher that you're looking for, is someone like with a track record and a good enough strikeout percentage, there's still a better option here. So it's just really tough for me to justify paying that price tag for, the 11th highest strikeout percentage on the slate.
What do you think of hitters here?
I think there's a couple pretty good value spots. Looking to the Tampa bats, you get power in Tommy Pham at only 3,700 and Travis d'Arnaud, 2,300 batting 5th at catcher. Paying down a catcher for a guy that does have close to a 180 ISO against lefties is certainly not the worst idea in the world. And then from the Dodgers side, I think that Kike Hernandez is really appealing. He's only 3,300 with multi-position eligibility on DraftKings. And Dave Roberts actually set this lineup up pretty nicely. So there's a pretty decent chance that Kike's first at bat actually comes against the lefty Jalen Beeks because he's hitting 5th. And, obviously, even if it's not his first at bat, his second at bat should. So I think at 3,300, he's a pretty nice value piece.
And you can make an argument that if it's not his first at bat, it means he's still in line to see more at bats than he would have if they went down 1-2-3
Sure.
in the first inning anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. Alex, thoughts on batters here? Obviously, two pretty low totals in this game. Beeks has been good, but you do have some power righties on the opposite side to talk about.
I think there are some standout values. Adam mentioned Travis d'Arnaud. I completely agree. You rarely see a guy priced as low as he is these days. And on FanDuel, I probably wouldn't get there, but on Yahoo and DraftKings, he's basically minimum priced. So I think that's a pretty good play. Some other guys that are well priced are Kike Hernandez and Chris Taylor. But overall, I think these teams are fairly priced, but the team totals really aren't that appealing, so contrarian play only.
All right, let me go back to you for a second, Adam, because you mentioned him earlier in the show. I talked about him extensively on this morning's show. Miami in Detroit, Spencer Turnbull and Caleb Smith. Normally we'd start any game with Caleb Smith on the mound with the discussion of Caleb Smith. We'll get there. But Spencer Turnbull right now projected to have only 12% ownership on DraftKings, which is remarkably low given the matchup. I mean, you are talking about a Marlins team that just go across the board. It doesn't matter where it is against right-handed pitching. This team is probably going to be last. For example, 260 weighted on base average, last. How about their isolated slugging, 0.091, last. What about WRC plus? 64, last. But what makes it even more appealing is that the Marlins against righties are striking out at a top 2 clip this season. So not only are they terrible everywhere, but they're striking out more against righties. They're a righty-loaded lineup for the most part. And Turnbull's striking out north of a batter per inning this year. Were you surprised to see his ownership, or as much as I was, to see where his ownership was coming in on 2-pitcher sites?
Yeah, I'm really hoping it stays down there and that Quintana soaks up a decent amount of it, because Turnbull is my favorite guy in this price range. I like him more than Quintana. I like him more than Archer. And the reasoning is, so Detroit's not, I mean, it's a favorable park for hitters, but the weather right now isn't great. So not a huge concern there. But the thing that really stands out is if you look at the total strikeout percentage for Turnbull versus Quintana this season, they're almost identical, both between 23 and 24%. But I mentioned Quintana's strikeouts are boosted by lefties, where he struck out 32% compared to 20% of righties. It's the same kind of thing for Turnbull. He struck out 29% of right-handed hitters this year, compared to he struck out 29.8% of right-handed hitters this year, and he's got 7 in the Marlins lineup. So whereas Quintana's facing a bunch of guys, where he doesn't have the platoon split, Turnbull does, and his numbers are just so much better against righties, and he's facing a bunch of terrible righties here that I just really, really like the spot for Turnbull.
All right. Yeah, and so do I. I like everything about it. Alex, do you like Spencer Turnbull today against the Marlins?
Absolutely. And if you look at their team total, the Marlins are at 3.9. That means facing the Marlins makes Spencer Turnbull look like Clayton Kershaw out there. I mean, Turnbull doesn't get quite as many strikeouts, but he's at 23%, which is respectable. So I think when you have him priced at the mid, pretty much the mid tier on each site, I think that puts him squarely in play. And on DraftKings, 17%, FanDuel 2%, Yahoo 1%. Those are all ownership numbers I like.
So do I. And I was really surprised to see Spencer Turnbull at 7,800 on DraftKings. Usually you see that dynamic pricing there where he would be 85, 8,600, but that's not the case. So, when you're getting him at such a good value, because someone had just asked us, can we talk a little more about FanDuel? When we're referencing sites by name, it's because there's something that really stands out there, or because FanDuel or DraftKings and Yahoo are 2-pitcher sites where certain guys are a lot more appealing there, where you wouldn't necessarily turn to them on FanDuel. Like, for example, Adam, where do you stand on Turnbull at 8,600 on FanDuel, where you're playing only one pitcher, and he's basically the same price as Eduardo Rodriguez, and not much cheaper than guys like Zach Wheeler?
Yeah, I think that it's obviously less appealing there. I still like him. I still like the matchup for all the reasons.
Yeah, me too.
But it's, certainly would expect to have lower exposure to Turnbull on FanDuel than I would on DraftKings.
All right. Alex, let's turn the hitting here. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We forgot about somebody kind of important. Caleb Smith. So you want to talk about how good he's been this year? And I'll turn this over to you, I promise, but I've been waiting to talk about this because I think it's amazing. His 16.5% swinging strike rate is the highest on the slate by 2 full percent. It is 2% higher than Justin Verlander's, which is just insane. Now, obviously, Verlander gets a ton of strikeouts, but Caleb Smith, with a 35.2% strikeout rate, also leads this entire slate. He's just been insane with his ability to miss bats this year. I guess the big question is, are you willing to pay for him when he's the same price almost, or not the same price, when he's above 10K? And do you trust him to get deep enough into this game? Go ahead.
Which one?
Adam.
Yeah.
Alex. I'm sorry.
Oh, my bad. I was trying to figure out this mic thing. All right. Caleb Smith, been killing it this year. 2.25 ERA. xFIP is 3, so he's been getting a little bit lucky too. But the Detroit lineup's nothing to really write home about. They're not a great strikeout matchup. I have their team strikeout rate at 22.5% today. And Caleb Smith's been striking out about 30% on the year, so I'd expect that to be about what you can expect today. And on every site, though, he's pretty much the highest priced pitcher, like 10K on DraftKings and FanDuel, and 52 on Yahoo. So as far as a price play, I think he's pretty fairly priced. So that means if you want to go for a cheap stack and fit him in, that could be a good strategy.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, the only thing I would say is I do think that I think sometimes Caleb Smith is someone that when his price is up, he goes overlooked just because no one really thinks he can sustain it. Now, I'm not saying, Adam, that he can sustain a 35% K rate, but the 3 pitches that he uses, all of them are really good. And, he does have elite stuff. So if Smith were to go out there and strike out another double digit or rack up another double digit strikeout game, I wouldn't be surprised. Where do you fall on this with him being $10,400 on DraftKings, 10-1 on FanDuel, and on Yahoo, Caleb Smith is $52, the second highest priced pitcher?
Absolutely love him. One of my favorite tournament plays on the entire slate because I think he is expensive enough where people will go to Verlander over him.
For
We had
sure.
him projected early on in the day at like 7% ownership on DraftKings, and you can make a pretty strong argument that to this point in the season, Caleb Smith's been the best starter in baseball.
You could
Not
very
saying that-
much. You know who else? You know who else that no one talks about that probably could win the Cy Young? Hyunjin Ryu has been lights out, and you don't really hear much on that either. You could look that up. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm not saying Smith will be the best pitcher from here on out. I'm saying he has been to this point.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of numbers that back that up. You know, the PCRA stat that I mentioned, there are 10 pitchers in baseball below 3. He's one of them, and everyone else on that list basically is an ace. Not even basically. Everyone else on that list is an ace. He has a 2.82 PCRA, which is 8th in all of baseball. 2.92 xFIP's the best on the slate. 35.2% strikeout percentage, far and away the best on the slate. But his walk percentage this year even has gone from 10.1% last year to 7.7% this year. Best K minus BB percentage on the slate. Everything looks great. He struck out 37.4% of righties this year, and he's getting a right-handed heavy lineup against the Tigers. Every pitch he throws has at least a 15% swinging strike percentage. There's like nothing that suggests Caleb Smith is outperforming where he should be, except for his minor league numbers from like 3-4 years ago, where clearly he's just made some changes since then. But most good projection models go back and they're still factoring in data from a couple of years ago. So I think he's under projected, which also keeps his ownership down. I just love Caleb Smith. I think he comes in under owned. He's one of my favorite tournament plays on the slate.
All right. Yeah, dude, he's fantastic. And I think you say under owned. If Caleb Smith was in that price range with Herman Marquez and Clayton Kershaw, Domingo Germán, meaning in that 9K range, right? I'll throw Wheeler in there. You could throw Rodriguez in there at 89 too. That's fine. Then I think you would see ownership coming in a lot higher. But I think this scares people off, and they say, well, I'll just go with what you perceive to be the sure thing in Verlander. Now, obviously, none of us are going to say anything bad about Justin Verlander, but Caleb Smith's upside has been, as good as anyone this year. His whiff rate on the 3 pitches that he throws, this is what stands out to me the most. Against righties, so against hitters that have the platoon advantage against him, 22% on his changeup. He's throwing that pitch almost a quarter of the time. 26%. The slider, he's throwing 24% of the time. He's got a 16% K rate against righties on that. But this is what stands out. 50% almost fastball usage, 18% whiff rate, 32% whiffs per swing. That fastball has been incredible. And when you're missing that many bats with your primary pitch, the sky is the limit with someone like him. So, all right, I think we've done enough pitching on this game, but it really is a great matchup. I have no problem playing Caleb Smith and Turnbull in the same lineup, honestly. Alex, anything for hitters here with 2 good arms on the mound?
I'll throw out one counterpoint about Caleb Smith.
Please.
To this point, he's only averaged 23 batters a game. And since his whip has been .92 on the year, that hasn't really made a dent in his innings per game, which is 6. But that is probably not sustainable. And I think that he does go a little bit less deep in games than compared to other ace pitchers. So I think that is one reason why I wouldn't call him a bona fide fantasy stud quite yet. As far as hitters, I think that people are going to be a little bit cute trying to get Miami in today. And I think it could make sense if Spencer Turnbull was more popular. But what we're just seeing is these bargain bin prices for the Miami bats. And that's manifested in an 8% team ownership on DraftKings, 5% on Yahoo and FanDuel, while I only have their chance of being the top stack at about 2%. So I think that people are going to be a little bit cute trying to pick Miami on the day where maybe they're a good value, but I tend to find those high-owned value plays aren't the best GPP strategy. As far as Detroit, I mean, going up against Caleb Smith, I don't think that's a very good idea to go there.
All right. And look, I think it's a fair point on Smith. 16.1 pitches per inning. It's 20th highest in the league. Funny because it's right below Max Scherzer and Walker Buehler. But I mentioned Hyun-Jin Ryu. He actually is averaging fewer pitches than any other pitcher by almost a full pitch per inning. Man, he's been good this year. Not on the slate though, so we'll move on. Adam, Mets and the Washington Nationals. This one's at Citi Field in New York. Pitching for the Mets, you've got Zach Wheeler, Eric Fetty on the mound for the Washington Nationals. Last I looked, ownership on Wheeler was looking like we were going to see quite a bit of it. Right now, on DraftKings, ownership on Wheeler is projected at 30%. So he's definitely up there. And on Yahoo at 39%. On FanDuel, a little bit different. Wheeler, you got to scroll. He's at 17%. So the highest projected ownership on DraftKings and FanDuel, 2 pitcher sites.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wheeler is good, but I won't be getting anywhere near that ownership.
Me neither.
So this Washington team's almost fully healthy now, and I think that makes a big difference because you see so many people talk about, what a team has done over the course of a year, and that's fine if you're just using it as, like a quick reference, but this team's totally different. For the season, they've struck out like 25% of the time against right-handed pitching, but the guys in this actual lineup, everyone in the top 5 has struck out less than 22% against right-handed pitching since last year. Most of them well below that number. Rendon, Eaton, Parra, all, in the teens. And with Rendon and Robles and Soto and Turner all in the lineup, you have, good hitters now. It's not that favorable of a matchup. Wheeler is, inexpensive for his talent level, but that's not an issue on the slate because you have a ton of guys that are really talented around him, so you can be picky. And if ownership's going to go there, I would rather just have, some of the lower owned guys. I don't think that, Washington's like a great stack or anything like that, but I don't think they're a bad offense either.
Right. That surprised the hell out of me too, because while they're not elite, you're dealing with a team that got Trey Turner back. Rendon's been back for a while now. Juan Soto came off the DL a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to act like Gerardo Parra is a huge upgrade, but you have Victor Robles. I mean, there are some Ks, no question, but this lineup is not as bad as their numbers are on the season. Maybe you have a different opinion on this matchup for Zach Wheeler, Alex.
I think Wheeler is going to be chalky tonight, and usually there is a reason for that. I think there's reasons to be less optimistic than his overall performance this year. Well, I guess one factor that's in Wheeler's favor, his ERA this year is 4.85, his xFIP is 3.5. So he's been getting unlucky with that, but he's been going super deep in games, 27 batters per game on average over the season. And if you plug that number in, you get a pretty good strikeout number, despite the fact that Washington strikes out a little bit less than average. But I'm not really sure that 27 batters a game is sustainable, so I think that if you just plug in all of his statistics, you might be getting a higher result than you could realistically expect tonight. So I think taking all that into account, the fact that he's 9K on DraftKings and FanDuel, I think he's a pretty good play as far as price. But there's so many other good plays in that price range too. I think that my ownership is going to be spread out pretty much throughout all those guys.
Are you looking at any bats in this game? Eric Fetty on the other side for the Nationals?
I think there are a couple of bats that stand out as far as great values. Brandon Nimmo on FanDuel and Yahoo is absurdly underpriced at $2,711. And on DraftKings, he's 3.6K. So I think just leading off, I mean, the team total is 4.84, so just about average, but that price is well below average. So I think I'd give him a look. And then Robinson Cano on DraftKings in particular is 3,500, which is also really low for someone batting third in the order. So I think I'd give him a look.
Okay. Adam, hitters.
I was going to say everything he just said. Brandon Nimmo just scratched like as he was talking.
Oh, shit.
So less appealing now, but So one thing that I do think is interesting in tournaments is that while there's not really Mets that are that appealing as a one-off, Eric Fedde hasn't thrown more than 49 pitches in a game since April 23rd, and the Nats bullpen is absolute trash behind him. So if he doesn't get deep into this game, you have a lot of like tack on run upside from the Mets, and they're all really cheap. So they would be a team that, they're not a top stack for me, but if you are looking to pay for two expensive pitchers, they're a team that does give you some upside.
Okay. We've got 6 games to go here. About 22 minutes, so making decent timing. Live before lock coming up after this. Milwaukee, Cincinnati. Let's start with you, Alex. Gio Gonzalez, Sonny Gray. I have a feeling when Adam mentions cheap pitchers, anytime Sonny Gray, I see him smirking over there. Am I close?
No, man, I hate him.
Yeah, I thought so. We'll get Alex's take first, then we'll let Adam gush over Sonny Gray. Feel free to mute your computer when that starts. I'm kidding. No, he's been pretty good. But anyway, Alex, Milwaukee and Cincinnati today. I think like last I looked 4-7 total for Milwaukee. It may have changed. Cincinnati has been a pretty dismal offensive team all season long. They're sitting around 3.9. What are your thoughts on this pitching matchup inside a pretty hitter-friendly park in Milwaukee?
Well, Avi, thanks. First of all, for the veteran tip here.
Yeah.
If Adam suddenly has connection problems when we're talking about Sonny Gray, nothing to be suspicious about. One team, I think with the batting, Milwaukee has a team total of 5, which is pretty good, but their ownership is only 1.8 on DraftKings, so well below average. So I see an opportunity there. The value is not good. I have them only 1.8 points per dollar, but it's pretty even throughout the lineup, so I think there's some good combinations there, and there's a pretty good chance they'll be the team you need to have. So I think that's a reasonable pay up to be contrarian spot. Sonny Gray, I think, is also an option, so I'm recommending the batters and the pitcher here, but that's just because he helps you get in some expensive players. Obviously, you can't pair Gray and the Brewers here, but that would be pretty nice, but 6,700 on both DraftKings and FanDuel, that will let you get those expensive bats, and we don't see a lot of viable pitchers in that price range usually, so I think that if you need someone in the price, he's a pretty good option.
All right, Adam, floor is yours, guy.
So I agree that Milwaukee's a high upside stack because when Gray gets in trouble, it's usually with walks and he'll drive his pitch count up and get out of the game. But that aside, it's price dependent. So he's really cheap on site dependent. Sorry. He's really cheap on FanDuel, but he's pretty unnecessary there with it being a one pitcher site. He has guys like Eflin and Archer at the same price point on Yahoo. So I still will get to him, but not as much. But on DraftKings, I absolutely love Gray in tournaments because he's
How did I know? That's weird. I can't believe I guessed that.
So he's not going to get ownership because Milwaukee has like a 5 implied run total and everyone knows they're good and, et cetera, et cetera. But he's better than every pitcher around him, and it's not really close. Guys like Fedde, who hasn't thrown more than 49 pitches, Anderson, who's probably going to go 5 innings, and then a bunch of guys in, bad parks or just bad pitchers. But on top of that, out of all the pitchers on this slate, Sonny Gray's tied with Zach Wheeler for the 3rd highest strikeout percentage this year at 26%. And some other stats I look at, his called strike plus swinging strike percentage, it's 33rd among all starters this year. It's on this slate, it's only behind Smith, Verlander, Marquez, Herman, and Rodriguez. His PCRA is 0.76 runs better than his ERA at 3.54. It's better than every pitcher on the slate except for Smith, Greinke, Verlander, Rodriguez, and Marquez. He has the 2nd highest ground ball percentage on the slate behind Stroman. Basically, he's been better than almost every pitcher on the slate except for probably like 6 or 7 this year, according to most underlying metrics that I look at. And he's the 21st most expensive pitcher on DraftKings with probably close to no ownership. So I'm going to just get a ton of Sonny Gray. And if he melts down like he tends to do somehow, then oh well.
Well, you also probably will like the news that Christian Yelich is scratched.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
That doesn't hurt.
No.
If you're Sonny Gray. As a matter of fact, I was not really high on Sonny Gray. I have a lot more interest in him now. Seeing that the best hitter in the NL is scratched, generally will do some favors for the opposing pitcher. Alex, I mean, I already know what Adam feels. Does that change your mind on Milwaukee stacks at all? Alex, do you make you like them more because you're going to get a cheap bat in there? What about Sonny Gray? Any changes since such a potent hitter's out of the order?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gray is a better play. Yelich, not great for strikeouts, and obviously has a lot of power, gets on base a ton, so I think that's a big hit to Milwaukee's offense. As far as switching on to other bats, probably about a net neutral, because Yelich was priced at 5,800, which is so high, but that'll mean some more at bats for guys at a lower price point. But the team's overall effectiveness will be lower too, so I'm not really seeing it move the needle a ton.
Okay,
Can I throw one more thing in?
please.
So most of the hitters that you would be afraid of, like Grandal, Moustakas, Thames, are left-handed, and Gray's actually struck out 31.2% of lefties this year. 281 expected WOBA, so he's had success against both sides too. It's not like he's getting hit hard by lefties or anything.
All right, cool. Do you have any thoughts on hitters here, Adam, before we move on?
I mean, I think Milwaukee is a high upside stack, but I obviously would be getting to more Sonny Gray than Milwaukee. As far as the Reds go, I think Suarez is a pretty decent option. He's expensive, but just a really good hitter, especially against left-handed pitching, favorable park. We don't really know what Gio Gonzalez is at this point. He's only made a couple of starts this year, but I think that Suarez probably has the advantage there. But beyond that, the Reds kind of suck.
All right. Yeah, they have been really bad. Texas and Seattle. We'll stick with you, Adam. Another high total game. Lance Lynn on the mound for the Rangers. He has, for his career, been better against righties by a large. Like, if you took his career numbers, he's been borderline elite against righties. It's just lefties have really given him trouble. Globe Life Park has also given him some trouble through only 3 starts this year, 6 of them on the road. And then, of course, Tommy Malone back in action, man. His contract selected from AAA Tacoma, and here he is. So that should be enjoyable. The interesting thing, though, is, and I don't know how many times you and I have mentioned this on the deeper dive, the Rangers are so much better against righties because, like, look, you have Logan Forsythe leading off, and don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that Tommy Malone is going to go out there and mow him down, but I just always like the Rangers more against righties. Forsythe, Calhoun, a lefty. Pence is a righty. Then you have Mazzara and Gallo, both lefties. Asdrubal Cabrera, much better from the left side, is a switch hitter. Then Rodon Odor, Ronald Guzman, and Jeff Mathis. So this is very unusual that you see a team running out, 5 lefties against the right-handed pitcher. Most teams are able to get heavy enough from the right side. The Rangers aren't one of those teams. So if you want to talk about either of these pitchers first, that's fine. Otherwise, let's start with the Rangers hitters.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on how to feel about this game because on one hand, it's obviously great hitting conditions in Texas. It's Tommy Malone, who I, until last night, had no idea still played professional baseball and hasn't been very good forever. But like you said, Texas is just kind of an unappealing lineup here. And like guys like Logan Forsythe are really expensive. But both bullpens in this game are really bad also. And I think that's where a lot of the values or the upside's going to come from is you could very easily see something like you saw last night where one of these teams is disappointing for 6 innings and then just goes nuts late in the game. It's upside through all 9 innings. Joey Gallo in particular, I really like because he's expensive and from a, optimal play standpoint, he's overpriced in the lefty-lefty matchup, but he does have over a 300 ISO against lefties since 2017. Tommy Malone is better against lefties than righties, but he's still not good. And so I think Gallo probably comes a bit underowned for the spot. It's a really high upside stack for Texas, but as far as like individual plays at their positions, I don't have anyone that really stands out. Cabrera, like you said, much better as a lefty than a righty. He's cheap, but the reason for that is he has like a 120 ISO against left-handed pitching over the last 3 years.
Right. What about you, Alex? Is this a spot where you're not worried about all the lefties in the lineup?
So I think that there's some really interesting strategical moves you can make here. The first one that really jumps out at me is Jeff Mathis is projected for 16% ownership, which is double the stack on DraftKings. So if you just make a Texas stack without Jeff Mathis, who sucks at baseball, Like that's going to be like way more contrarian than you'd expect. And a couple guys that really jump out at me are Willie Calhoun and Asdrubal Cabrera on Yahoo, projected for 31 and 35% ownership, where the rest of the team is around 5 to 10%. So I think if you avoid like some of these really high owned bats in your stack, you can gain an edge that way. Especially like stacking up the Rangers on FanDuel, where they only have 10% ownership. They're priced pretty well, and the team I have is a 12% chance of being the top stack of the night with a 6.2 run total. On the other hand, I recommend sticking away from Seattle on FanDuel. They're priced even better, but they have a 17.5% team ownership, which is just off the charts. And their chance of being the top stack, according to my model, is only 10.5%. So I think you can use the ownership to your advantage here.
Okay. Any top options you like from this game from a hitter standpoint, Alex?
I think there's some really good values. Shed Long, batting ninth on DraftKings, standing out. Another guy with way too high ownership. He's only 2K on FanDuel as well. But batting ninth with a team total of 6 is almost as good as batting 6th or 7th in a normal game. And then Mathis on DraftKings is way underpriced. And Asdrubal Cabrera on all the sites is a great cash play.
All right. Adam, we're obviously still talking hitters here. Is there anyone that stands out to you specifically as well? Same question as I asked Alex.
So in addition to Gallo, I think that Vogelbach stands out. Jay Bruce stands out batting 6th. Maybe keeps his ownership down a bit, and he's the most affordable guy there. But I think like a bottom of the order Mariner stack, if I were going to the Mariners, would make some sense just because they're really cheap.
All right. I guess we can move on here. We've got how many to go? 4 games. All right. Houston, Chicago White Sox, Alex, Verlander, Dylan Covey. Look, the heaviest favorite on this slate, no surprise. That is Justin Verlander. 347 money line favorite. 2.9 total for the White Sox. I mean, look, obviously everything is in Justin Verlander's favor. And like I said, second highest swinging strike rate on this slate behind only Caleb Smith. He is going to be the most expensive pitcher across the board. Is it worth paying for him today with the amount of pitchers we have?
I think so. I mean, it depends a lot on the rest of your lineup, of course. I don't think he's mandatory by any means, but I think I have him projected to be far and away the best pitcher. The White Sox aren't quite as good a strikeout matchup as they were last year, but I have them projected about average as far as strikeouts today. But they're really standing out in the team total of 3.4. That's pretty abysmal. And Verlander's strikeouts have been good, and he's been going deep in games. So I think all the signs are pointing positive.
All right, Adam.
He's the guy that I would definitely go to as my SP1 in cash games. I don't know that I'll get that much in tournaments just because as of the last time I checked our ownership projections, he was projected for like 4 times as much as Smith. And Smith has a higher strikeout percentage, a better swinging strike plus called strike percentage, better PCRA. Like so many stats are in Smith's favor to where the fact that Verlander has the longer track record doesn't outweigh him being 4 times his own for me. So unless that ownership gap closes, I think I'll end up with more Smith than Verlander in tournaments, but I would go Verlander in cash just because it's Verlander.
Okay. What about bats, Adam?
Nothing from the White Sox side. From the Houston side, I think, a really high upside spot. Dylan Covey hasn't allowed much power to righties since last year, below 100 ISO, but you just have so many good hitters in the Houston lineup. You have the White Sox, who basically had a bullpen game yesterday, and so that gives you some upside as well. They used 4 different pitchers yesterday out of the bullpen, so if Covey does get in trouble early, then there's a bunch of upside. Springer's still not in the lineup, so that helps you save a little bit of money as well. You get a high upside catcher play in Chirinos. You have Diaz back in the lineup as a second base option, so I think it's just a pretty nice spot for Houston.
All right, let's talk some hitters here as well, Alex. It's a Houston team that let us down a bit yesterday, but still has a whole lot of potent hitters throughout their lineup. Now, they are dealing with some injuries, but Still a lot of quality bats. You will have to pay for them, but it's also Dylan Covey.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a similar spot to yesterday with the pricing and the potential. I mean, the team total 5.9, that's pretty high. I have them for about 10% being the top stack, which is much higher than their projected ownership on DraftKings, and on FanDuel and Yahoo, it's considerably higher. But the difference between today and yesterday is today we have some better value pitchers. You don't have to go to Andrew Kashner. You can get my man, Ship My Money's play of the day, Sonny Gray. And I think that makes them a lot more palatable to stack up.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming, I'm not, we don't have to spend much time on the White Sox hitters, especially given that they're never really cheap enough for the matchup anyway. They're always routinely overpriced. Adam, Atlanta and San Francisco, Julio Turan and Sean Anderson, great park, obviously. Low totals on both sides of this game, which shouldn't surprise anybody. It's just, when I look at the mid-range options on this slate, it's so difficult to say, oh yeah, give me Julio Turan over a Spencer Turnbull or, over a lot of guys in that range. Are you on him today? Do you have him as one of your higher ranked pitchers at in his pricing tier?
I think he's a good play on Yahoo. He's in that same pricing tier with Archer and with Sonny Gray. If you wanted to kind of rotate through those guys, I think it makes sense because the park's good, the matchup's good, but I have no reason to get to Tehran on the other sites just because he is priced up more on FanDuel. Obviously, we're only rostering one guy, so not really getting to him outside of Yahoo.
What about you, Alex?
This is what in the industry I believe we call a Manny special.
That's right.
But yeah, I don't really like the pitchers or batters just because I'm not seeing a ton of strikeouts or a lot of offensive firepower.
Okay. I guess I guess we got to talk hitters here too, Alex. So maybe there's something that we can pull from this one.
I do think that I probably will be avoiding the game. The top of the order for San Francisco is pretty well priced with Panic, Voit, and Posey, but Stephen Voit is a great value on FanDuel at 2.2K. But other than that, I mean, I'm not that enthusiastic about the game.
Do you want to talk bats here, Adam?
Give me some Brandon Belt, 260 ISO against right-handed pitching in San Francisco since 2017. The park doesn't really limit him. He has like 380 WOBA. Tehran's, whatever against lefties. And I don't think first base is actually that good of a position today.
Okay. Yeah, neither do I. Well, 2 games to go, Minnesota and the Angels. I'll stick with you here, Adam. Michael Pineda, Trevor Cahill. Cahill has really struggled this year. All of his swing and strike stuff is down. Pineda, meanwhile, has allowed 3 home runs in each of his last 2 starts. And now on the season, 13 long balls in 9 starts. And he is going into a park in LA or in Anaheim that, used to be a lot more friendly to pitchers. I don't think that's the case anymore. The Angel Stadium has seen a whole lot of home runs this season. And last season, it just wasn't talked about as much. They lowered the wall from 18 to 8 feet. A 10-foot drop is pretty significant when you're talking major league hitters.
Yeah, I really like this game. You get Cahill, who, like you said, has really struggled this year. I've talked about it before that I think a big part of that is that he's throwing his fastball and curveball from completely different release points now. Until that changes, I think you're going to see him continue struggling. And so you have, left-handed power. All 4 guys, the top 4 in the Minnesota lineup will all be hitting left-handed. There's speed in this lineup. Cahill's terrible at holding runners. Kevin Smith is catching. So, yeah, literally anybody can steal bases in this matchup. So really, really high upside spot for Minnesota. The lower wall in right field, like you said, helps as well. And then on the other side, Pineda was a high strikeout pitcher who had a home run problem. Now he is a pitcher who doesn't get strikeouts and still has a home run problem. So Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, who is still incredibly underpriced, are the 2 guys that stand out from the Angels. But then you still get to guys like, Pujols, Calhoun, Listella that are all fine.
Okay. I like the Angels in this game. I think they're in a pretty friendly spot. Ownership. What's our ownership look like on this Angels team? Maybe you have it pulled up here, Alex. I can pull it up quickly too.
Yeah,
but
it's on DraftKings. It's 5%, FanDuel 2.5 and Yahoo 2.5.
Okay, so that's actually on the higher end. It's not super high, but just Pineda has been a gas can from a home run standpoint, and Cahill hasn't been a whole lot better. He's allowed 14 home runs in 9 starts. He's been blasted this year. Multiple home runs allowed in I think 5 of 9 starts. It's just been bad for both of them. Are you looking at any hitters in this game, Alex?
I like the idea of stacking up Minnesota with they have about a 5% chance of being the top stack, which is above average on a 14 game slate. Team total 5.1, pretty good. And the ownership is low. I think on DraftKings they're 3%, FanDuel and Yahoo they're 2%. And the reason why is just because the value isn't great. But I find a lot of times in fantasy baseball it's worth sacrificing a little bit of value to be contrarian. So this is a spot where I think you can do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. Anything else either of you guys want to touch on with this one?
Don't be afraid of the bottom of the order Minnesota guys either. Castro has some power for a catcher, and Byron Buxton is really fast.
Yeah, and Buxton has hit an alarming amount of doubles this year. When I saw the amount of doubles this dude had hit, it's ridiculous. I think what is he? 18 doubles on the year.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah, he's got 8 stolen bases, 18 doubles, 2 triples, 4 home runs. Like Buxton's been productive at the bottom of that order, man. And I think it's pretty surprising to most, including myself. Let's close it out here, Alex. Arizona, San Diego, Zach Greinke, Matt Strom. I know our boy Josh Engelman was very high on Greinke earlier today. We had a bit of a discussion just as far as strikeout rate goes, but also Greinke's ability to pitch deep into games, going up against the high K, righty-heavy San Diego team. Which side of the fence are you on when it comes to Greinke against the Padres?
I think Greinke is he's going to end up with a pretty good projection because of his 25% strikeout rate on the year. As you said, not going super deep in the games, but the main factor here that makes me want to avoid him is the price tag. He's priced like he's an elite pitcher at 10.2 on DraftKings, 11K on FanDuel, and 52 on Yahoo. And I just think his strikeouts are a little bit too low to justify that kind of price tag.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I like Greinke more than like Kershaw and Herman, but the thing that's going to make it tough for me to get to Greinke is that his strikeout percentage is literally 10 percentage points lower than Caleb Smith's for $200.
He has the fourth, or wait, let me make sure here because it's pretty insane because it's a slate with a good amount of bad pitching. Greinke has 1, 2, 3, the 4th lowest swinging strike rate on the entire slate.
That's surprising.
Yeah, Covey, Anderson, and Hess are behind him, 8.9%. The thing is, Greinke does a phenomenal job of getting called strikes and called strikeouts as well. So I wouldn't put it past him to have a decent game here. Either of you guys, free for all here. Matt Strom and hitters because we got to go. Any thoughts?
Kettle Marte is good.
Okay, Alex.
I think Strom is in play, but he's a contrarian play.
All right, then. I guess that'll do it. Quickly, top stacks. We'll start with you, Adam. What do you have here?
Minnesota, Houston, Texas, Mets, Yankees.
All right, Alex.
I think I might go back to the well with Houston today just because their ownership's so low and their team total and their potential is pretty high.
All right, fair enough. I'll throw in one more. I think the Angels could be really interesting against Pineda. Really just 2 guys that have allowed an immense amount of home runs. And when it comes to stacks, we like power. So Angels and Twins and Angel Stadium has just been a lot more friendly from a hitter standpoint. I have no problem getting there either. That'll do it for us. Thanks as always for tuning in. And before you head out, hit that thumbs up if you enjoy the show and you want to help us support us and the site and the channel. Like the video, it does us a lot of favors and we appreciate it much. Subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. Until next time, we will see you. Good luck tonight. Deeper Dive is over. Live Before Lock is yet to begin. Right now, stick around on the Awesome Oak channel. Peace.